Our first panel this morning is titled Managing the Future Workforce, Innovation in Service Delivery. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this morning, this session, Chi-Chi Nyaga-Nash. Ms. Nash is a phenomenal public servant in her own right. It says it right here.
It must be true.
It must be true. It's in writing, right? Like the newspaper. She is a member of the Schaefer Center Advisory Board, a graduate of the Maryland Certified Public Manager Program, and Chief Operating Officer for the Maryland Department of General Services. You can applaud if you want. So I'd like to now hand it over to Chi-Chi, who will run this marvelous panel because my friend Mark is on it. No pressure, Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to be here to moderate two amazing speakers from the state of Maryland. I just first, again, want to thank Michael for your words and for ending with the blessing that you pulled out of your book. So two things that stood out for me from that excerpt was, may you ... endlessly fascinating and rewarding, and I have to say all my years in public service have been that. And then also something that really stood out to me was that our service ought to be transparent, accessible, and effective. I think if we were to do a poll of the general public, apart from thinking about the military and DARPA and those kind of programs, the general consensus would probably be that the words government and innovation are perhaps mutually exclusive, which in this room we know is absolutely not the case. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what Mark and John, apologies, are gonna share with us about what they have instituted in their organizations to be more effective, transparent, and to make our services to the public more accessible and effective. It's absolutely our responsibility to provide these services in that way. And we all know that it takes a culture change in some cases within our organizations to do that. And I just wanted to preview something that we are going to be viewing when Mark is speaking, which is a message from our governor. And I think we are extremely fortunate to have in our governor, Governor Moore, someone who speaks strongly about the culture change that's needed within the government and our delivery of service to the general public. So with no further ado, I will introduce our two speakers. John Leidig is the Director of Operations for Maryland Office of Administrative Hearings, where he is one of over 50 administrative law judges who listens to and makes decisions on appeals that are heard from over 35 state agencies. Mark Townend is the Director of Recruitment and Examinations Division within the Maryland Department of Budget and Management, where he plays a critical role in the state's talent acquisition efforts. And because of him, we are able to compete with the private sector and being able to bring the best and brightest into state government where we can be of best service to our citizens. So with that, I will ask John to come up and kick us off. And just, sorry, I should have said, we will listen to the two presenters, and at the end, we have an open forum for question and answers.
Thank you for that gracious introduction, Chi-Chi, and also thank you to Ms. Mikos and Ms. Cotton for reaching out to the Office of Administrative Hearings and having us speak to you today. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to address so many current and future leaders in public service. It's also fitting that I'm here today before the Schaefer Center for Public Policy because William Donald Schaefer was the driving force behind the creation of my agency. We hear, as Chi-Chi said, appeals from over 35 different state agencies. That means that we're considered a central panel because we hear more than one type of agency. My agency was formed in 1990 due to the efforts of William Donald Schaefer and the General Assembly because up to that time, the person who decided your case, if you wanted to appeal a decision of a state agency, that person was an employee of the agency. And that created an impression that you weren't getting a fair shake when you went to appeal the decision. Now the hearing function is centralized, and we cover, as I said, many different state agencies, including those that deal with public assistance, so that's SNAP or food stamp benefits, as well as temporary cash assistance and temporary disability assistance. We also do Medicaid appeals and many other different appeals for the Maryland Department of Health, including the Health Occupations Boards. We do motor vehicle cases, so that's drunk driving and accumulation of points cases. We also do special education cases, home improvement and real estate commission, insurance, and recently the legislature has increased our jurisdiction so that we handle appeals for concealed carry permits, and most recently, just last year, we were asked to handle Walter Lomax Act cases. That is compensation for erroneously incarcerated individuals. Those can be multi-million-dollar awards. You might follow these in the paper. Very interesting cases. And it's named after Walter Lomax, who was himself erroneously incarcerated for more than 20 years and who gave very impassioned testimony before the General Assembly when that bill was passed. My agency, I believe, is a good example of a mid-sized agency in the state. We have 117 employees. That includes 50 administrative law judges. But in addition to that, and I want to give a huge shout out to our clerk's office, that's over 40 clerks who really were the backbone of getting us through COVID when the rest of the agency was able to stay at home and like most of us, it was shut down. The clerks continued to go to the office, and the reason is that prior to COVID, we were completely a paper file office. So COVID, and that's what most of my presentation will discuss, COVID presented many challenges to us. We also have administrative aides and staff attorneys and a finance and administration department and an IT department. We're lucky enough to have in-house IT staff of 5 individuals, and we do have an in-house human resources director, and that really helped to steer us in the changes that I'll discuss that came about due to COVID. My agency handles approximately 30,000 cases a year. So as you can see, divided by 50 administrative law judges, our judges are very busy people. They issue both bench decisions and written decisions. Typically, a judge issues about 50 written decisions a year, about 1 a week. Again, very quick pace, but also a fascinating job because it covers so many different types of disputes and agencies. The highest volume areas for our cases are Motor Vehicle Administration, Department of Human Services, and the Maryland Department of Health. So shifting over to more of the topic of today's presentations, how did COVID change us and how did we face those challenges? Well, prior to COVID, almost all of our hearings were conducted in person, and that meant that our judges traveled around the state, including to local motor vehicle administration offices, also to local DSS offices all the way around the state, regardless of where you were located as a judge. You might have a 2-hour or 3-hour drive to Cumberland or to Salisbury or to Charles County, and our judges gladly did that. They're incredible public servants, but COVID made that impossible because the MVA shut down, the Departments of Social Services shut down, and we had an obligation to conduct these hearings and deliver on our mission, which is to provide due process for individuals affected by the decisions of state agencies. Some hearings are now able to be scheduled in person, but if our notice comes out to you and you're not happy with the in-person because you might have a particular condition, you can apply to ask for that hearing to be converted to a remote hearing, and the same is true about remote hearings. If we've scheduled your hearing to be remote, but you'd rather be seen by the judge in person, you can file a request with our agency. And I think that's an incredible innovation for us and such a service to the public because we meet people where they are. We deal with many vulnerable populations with our hearings, and it's important to them to be heard and to be heard in the manner that they can. Some hearings, as I mentioned, needed to be heard immediately because they involve emergency situations. I'll give you some examples. We handle hearings for involuntary admission to behavioral health units. In those cases, the patient who has been involuntarily committed, either through an emergency petition or by law enforcement, that patient is entitled to a hearing within 10 days. We also hear motor vehicle medical advisory board cases. These are cases where a person presents a danger to the public, and they've been emergency suspended on their license, and so the public safety is at stake. Also, we hear Office of Child Care cases, so that's foster homes and daycare operators. Those obviously are important hearings to conduct quickly because there is a public safety at stake. I'm happy to report that we were able to transition so quickly that all of those types of cases were heard on time. How did we do it? We came through with no backlog. We immediately shifted to Google Meet and WebEx, and we convened pilot projects for both of those hearing types. We've ended up shifting mostly to WebEx for 3 reasons. Number one, the WebEx allows us to have what's called a static hearing room, meaning that we can send out notices for the hearing weeks and even months in advance, and we know that that hearing room is available and it's printed on the hearing notice. Everybody knows where to go. Also, WebEx has a lobby function because if you go to many types of hearings, you have a docket of more than just one hearing, and so you want to be able to space out the people and tell them that they're likely to be heard by the judge. The lobby function allows us to do that by asking people to wait for their turn in the hearing and to manage the hearing participants. And I think one of the most useful things about WebEx, the third thing, is that it allows for breakout sessions. When you have individuals, our judges are also mediators, it's especially useful for mediations. If you have 3 different sides, 4 different sides in a case, you can break them out so they're not in the hearing of the other participants, and they can have a private conversation, or they can caucus with the mediator. As I mentioned, we did use pilot projects, and I'll just give an example of the motor vehicle cases. We had 12 ALJs who agreed to participate in our pilot project to use WebEx, and we intentionally chose both 2 types of people who are very tech savvy and the opposite. And the reason is that we wanted to make sure that all of our judges could master the different functions that WebEx offered before we let it loose on the entire agency. It was an excellent pilot project because I think as Mr. Stahl mentioned, it was a marketplace of ideas. Our judges came back to us with incredible suggestions on how to improve the process of using WebEx for the hearings. For the involuntary admissions hearings, which I mentioned, those have a very tight timeline of 10 days. We used what is called our subject matter specialist group in order to roll out doing those hearings on Google Meet. Obviously, the patient is confined in the hospital. We have a hospital presenter who presents on behalf of the hospital, and also public defenders are available to patients in those cases. And those groups work together to make it work for the involuntary admissions hearings. And as I mentioned, we were able not to have any backlog of those cases. Prior to COVID, the only employees in my agency who were able to telework were the administrative law judges. But we knew that that wouldn't be a model that would work after COVID. Therefore, we rolled out a pilot project for our administrative aides to also be able to telework. And the way that we did that, realizing that a lot of the administrative aid, the secretarial work, requires access to the physical files, we arranged our administrative aides in teams of 2 people, so pairs. The person who worked at home was paired with someone at the office who had access to the physical files. Communication, of course, very important to make sure that the work that's done at home gets done on time and that they report back to the person who's on site. And it's worked out incredibly well because I think it has improved the work-life balance for our administrative aides. Currently, we find that it's working well for our administrative aides to have 2 days of telework every week. Now, the clerks presented a different issue because, as I said, we're paper files. So many of those jobs are not eligible for telework. We looked at everything that the clerks do, and it just wasn't something that could be done at home. However, we do have a chief clerk and 3 deputy clerks. Their functions are a little bit different, and so we've arranged that the chief clerk and the deputy clerks do have 1 day of telework a week. But we're still working on that issue, and we hope to increase the telework for the clerks because they perform such superlative work for our agency. As Mr. Stahl mentioned, you need to have benchmarks for making sure that the work gets done. And so all of our telework is monitored by the supervisors, and there are benchmarks for production. We constantly monitor that to make sure that the process is working, and also we really want to expand telework more because it's a recruitment tool and a retention tool. We find that people who are interviewing, particularly for clerk jobs, are asking for telework, and right now we can't deliver on that, and I'm afraid that we would lose excellent employees if we don't expand telework further. The telework agreement that DBM puts out is signed by all employees who telework. We also have an internal telework agreement at our agency, and it requires the employees to report in by phone and email on a regular basis throughout the day, and that's to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. I think that's a very important thing to have in the telework agreement. We have also, because our employees are remote, we have increased our cybersecurity measures. We have monthly required cybersecurity training for all employees, and that's done by our IT department. And they will often send you a phishing email to make sure that you're staying alert. And if you're not, you will hear from IT. But I do think we've done a good job of reducing and managing cybersecurity threats. As many of you know, the Maryland Department of Health had a breach, and that did affect the cases that we receive from MDH, and we worked around that. What are the savings and the benefits of moving to telework and having remote hearings? Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's less travel for the administrative law judges and others. And that's actually a huge benefit because our ALJs, administrative law judges, spend a lot of their time writing and crafting their decisions. And if they're not on the road, they're much, much more productive. They're writing from their home. Also, how did we use the funds that we saved from having people not on the road as much? Well, we upgraded our technology. So we do have now about 200 WebEx licenses. There is a cost to that. Also, we've increased the number of individuals in the agency who have laptops with cameras, because the camera is an important part of having a hearing and also communicating with our staff. The next step for us is an e-filing project. It's an enormous project. Those of you who have contact with our courts know that most courts around the state have now transitioned to what's called MDEC. That's their e-filing system. We are not going to be using MDEC. Our current case management system is called Caseload. It's a very good system for now, but they don't currently have an e-filing module. We have some budgetary restraints on our end, but we are working with Caseload to have a module written for e-filing, and we hope that within the next few years, your interaction with our agency will be through the e-filing system, and that will be much more efficient for the people who have hearings before our agency. So I just wanted to give you that background on our agency and tell you how we've dealt with some of the challenges of COVID. I hope to be able to address you in a few years and say we have the e-filing system in place, because I think that will be an incredible service for Marylanders who have these hearings. So thank you for your time today.
Hello, I'm Mark Townend. I'm the Director of Recruiting for the State Personnel Management System of Maryland. I work for the Department of Budget and Management, which, as most of you know, is the old DOP, and the budgetary functions all folded into one. We have oversight and control of most of the state's hiring for the executive branch. And that's my mugshot. All right. Challenges facing the state. Right now we have a higher than normal vacancy rate for state positions. As most of you know, that's common throughout the United States right now with public service. Right now the state of Maryland is running between a 12 and 14% average vacancy rate, which compared to other governmental entities isn't too awful. But there are pronounced areas where we have deficits greater than that, obviously. Correctional officers, police, positions of that nature. So we're making efforts in those areas. Another challenge is we're facing other government entities. Maryland is very saturated with federal government, county government, city, municipalities, hospital centers, subcontractors, and even other state agencies that we compete with for resources sometimes. Unemployment is trending low. As most of you know, there is a silver tsunami, I've heard it called, great resignation, a number of people who are generally expressing an apathy toward entering the workforce at the bottom end. So we have a much smaller pool to draw from, and we need to kind of work on that.
Part of the movement.
Yeah. You are the tsunami, Mike. Oh, I'm sorry. That's downfall of being tall. The public perception of government. Right now, as you know, every night you can turn on the TV and you can see a story just sort of slamming what's going on at which administration, which level. So we're fighting that, the perception. Salary competitiveness, generally our positions are viewed to be lower in compensation than similar positions in the private sector, and sometimes at the county level, sometimes at the federal level, so we are competing on all those levels. How are we addressing that? Well, first, we try to address and make people aware of the fact that we have such a great diversity of jobs available in the state of Maryland. We have over 50,000 unique jobs in the executive branch at over 60 agencies. Each of those agencies has a different name because each one of them does something entirely different. So whatever you're into, we probably have a job doing that. Everything from environment to public safety, healthcare to transportation. whatever you're studying, whatever fascinates you, whatever interests you, we probably have jobs in that field. To get that word out, we're using our social media. We use that to highlight a number of different state careers. To keep content fresh, we post other agency postings. We'll share with other state agencies. As the central location, we have the state's sort of overarching umbrella accounts for Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Believe it or not, somebody came up with the idea that you could show a picture of a job, and that will fascinate people who are visual, and they will click through to the actual advertisement for that job. So we're experimenting with Pinterest, Instagram. We tried to do a couple snaps, but it wasn't really working well, and we tried. Creating Reels, absolutely not TikTok by any stretch, but Reels. We're looking at doing video clips and using those in our social media. On that note, let's see if I can actually make this work. We recently, just on a whim, contacted the governor's communications people, and they were kind enough to work with us and provide a video clip of the governor.
Marylanders are ready to serve. Join the Maryland state government today.
Where do you get that kind of energy? That guy's great. All right, so let's see. We can get back to the presentation. As mentioned, he was willing to work with us and provide us with several video clips that we are now using. Hang on just a sec. Yeah, which we're now using for all of our social media. The governor's support is huge. He came in the door and he said, hey, we're aware that there is a big problem going on with recruiting. So that kind of support makes it probably the best time in my career to be a recruiter for the state of Maryland. Now you might think, really, staggering deficits, lagging in a couple of areas, compensation, but we have right now a commitment of the administration and of our secretary and of all the managers to try new things. Where before we had a very sort of prescribed statutory process, we now have the ability to try things where before people might say, yeah, I don't know, that seems a little edgy. Now they're asking for edgy. They're like, come up with ideas, give us something, try it, go out there and do things. It's really kind of fun. It makes the job interesting. You can kind of go out, read an internet article and say, hey, I read something on going to high schools and trying to do a little, guerrilla recruiting at the lower levels to get people, brand awareness, make them aware that the state has these jobs, maybe try to partner with them, maybe try to create internships. So the commitment allows us to do a lot of things that previously we couldn't do. And we just continue to focus on the various social media platforms to reach the different demographics and age brackets. Career development. This is another area that we're stressing. The state has always been a great place to get experience. We train some of the best and brightest. You come in out of either high school or college right away, you can get experience and the flexibility to move around at different state agencies and jobs. So if you come in the door and you're working, let's say as I did, doing executive nominations and appointments to advisory boards and councils, that might lead you to say, well, I'm kind of doing a recruiting function, HR function, maybe I'll go work in recruitment, or maybe I'll go do something else. You can do that once you're in the system. You can move around, you get a really good perspective of what's out there. So we're stressing that. You have career development options. Being smaller than the federal government, it makes us more flexible and able to sort of implement changes quicker. The federal government has a giant bureaucracy, no offense to my federal government friends. But the state can move quickly right now. Being larger than the local governments, it gives us increased resources, and it gives us a regional influence that you might not have if you're working for a county or a city. So we can get you statewide experience, rural areas, urban areas. We get you the experience you need to go on with your career and make the decisions about what you want to do. You're able to affect change. We're stressing this in all our campaigns. As a state employee, your ideas right now especially are perking up very quickly. If you get in and you have a great idea, people are going to see that, and they're going to take your idea and they're going to make it work, and you can look at that at the end of the day and say, I did that, I was part of that. Our benefits are extremely competitive. They always have been. I think the rest of the world is trying to catch up at this point, but in terms of leave benefits, health benefits, a pension, not a lot of people offer a pension. I know for younger people that's not a big thing, but for guys like me and Mike, that's kind of interesting. So we are competitive that way. We have positions in every geographical location of the state. So if you're interested in working down on the Eastern Shore, we have positions there. If you're interested in Baltimore City, we have positions there, Western Maryland. So wherever you want to be, I believe the state's there. Career experience qualifications. This is one where we took a look at something that was, you know, just there all along, and then we kind of said, well, why is it there? So we're a national leader, Maryland is, in taking a look at our classification specifications and just saying, some of them require degrees, and for a reason. If you're an accountant or an attorney that needs to give advice, obviously you need to have a degree to do that. But we looked at some of our managerial positions and some of our administrative positions, and we were finding that the state was passing by a lot of really good sort of homegrown talent. We had people who'd been with the state for 15, 20 years and didn't qualify for management or leadership positions because they didn't have a degree. So we took a look and we said, is it necessary to have a degree to do those job functions? In some cases, we found it wasn't. I personally went up against somebody 5 years out of grad school. I went up and a person I was working with had 25 years of experience, and she was obviously the better qualified person for the job, but she had trouble being considered because she didn't have the degree. So we worked on that. We came around, we said, do you have to have it? Can we consider people with life experience? We highlight that education is still very important, obviously, but it's not a blocker for being considered. We want to be able to have people sit in front of us. We want to talk to them. We want to give them an opportunity at the job, and if they're the best person, they will prevail. These efforts have been highlighted in the Wall Street Journal. Maryland was credited with being the first state in the nation to employ such a strategy. We also appeared on The Full Measure, which is a Sunday morning television program, and we're able to speak to that program. I was excited about that. Technology. A lot of new candidates in the job and workforce right now are very interested in technology. They don't want to work for a place that doesn't have capability, doesn't have interesting technology. We went, you know, to the earlier point about paper, from an entire paper application system 10 years ago to an online application system and completely eliminated the paper. That's 250,000 applications a year in the state personnel management system. The mail coming in, the filing, the distribution, the timeliness, when you get something that's dated and it's a week old and the recruitment's already moved on, all of that was handled by having an online application system. It was huge. We were able to sort of retool and make people more IT focused than clerical administrative focus in our workforce. Another thing we're looking at right now, going toward new ideas, we're looking at one-way passive video interviewing, and that's a big mouthful, but basically what it is, it's the ability to record questions and interview people in off hours. We record the questions, you receive an email invitation to complete the interview on your own time, after hours, on the weekend, whenever you have time, you'll record your answers and you'll send those back. The panel then can each review the questions and responses on their own time. If I'm not busy Monday morning, but the other panel member is, they can review it Monday afternoon. I can look at it in the morning. We'll all get together, we'll talk about it. This gives us an incredible ability to reach people who don't have leave or time to take a day off of work to come interview with the state or don't want to go downtown and park. This has also been very popular in terms of reaching neurodiverse candidates and people who have anxiety issues with panel interviews. We can send this out, they can send us back their response, and they can make it over that first hurdle. I know most of you are thinking, well, doesn't that open the door for gaming the system? It does. You could have somebody coach you before you record your answer, but ultimately you're going to get to the next step in the process. And at that next step, it's going to be very apparent as to whether or not you know what you're talking about or you don't. It'll take 2 questions before I can tell you that somebody told you the answers on the recorded video. It doesn't take long. With that, how we continue to address the changing labor environment. As mentioned by both of my predecessors up here, you have to listen to the customer feedback and take that into account. You have to continually search. You can't ever sit down. There's a quote out there, and I probably should have looked up who said it, but a machine does exactly what it's designed to do. If your machine is looking at only college graduates and only looking at people who apply online and only looking at hiring people a certain way, then that machine is not changing and evolving into something that's going to work in the current labor environment, and you're going to see a reduced sort of return on your investment. You have to create a faster, creative environment and encourage staff to research ideas. I'm one person, but I have 10 people out there scouring the internet every day for an idea. When they bring me something, I have to keep an open mind. Some of it sounds crazy. I can remember when they first said, hey, we're looking at this IT solution called Squeezer that takes your web page and puts it on a telephone so you can actually read it on your telephone. And I can remember thinking, who's going to want to apply for a job on a phone? Obviously, they had a good idea. I'm glad we looked into it. You have to use recruiting system data. One of the big bonuses of this giant recruitment database is we now have over 1 million records of people who've applied for state jobs. We can data mine. We can do keyword searches. We can look at people who've applied for, say, a state police job, and then maybe give that list of potential candidates to public safety. And they can send them an email. Hey, a similar job at a similar location is now available. If you're interested, please apply. We can do interest cards. If you have an area like environment and you put in an interest card, whenever a job posts, you'll receive an email saying that, hey, there's a job in this field. If you're interested, apply. And if you have an account, you can just hit apply and it's done. This functionality to young people, it's like, yeah, right. To older people, it's like, well, that's kind of fascinating because you can really dig a little deeper and you can get into it. I can't say enough how much we appreciate the administration's sort of support. Going into turbulent times, if somebody just says, yeah, fix that, then you have a really hard time. But I can tell you for a fact that the administration has been very personal and very intimate with us in terms of, what do you need? Let's get moving. Let's get this done. Let's set some realistic and attainable goals. Let's get there. So this administration particularly has been very helpful to us. To be competitive, you just have to continuously adapt. You have to do continuous innovation. Again, if you sit still and you think, oh, is that it? Am I out of time? Lucky you. So you continue to innovate, continue to just search new ideas. I can't say that enough. When somebody young or somebody old comes to you with an idea, you're going to say, oh, do we need to do that, or do we need to invest the resources in it? Take a look. Keep an open mind. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there. I mean, the video interviewing thing just came to us by way of an advertisement for a group called Spark Hire. We then started working with our Job Apps, who's the provider of the state's online applicant tracking system. We started working with Job Apps to create a similar product that they're going to customize for us, and we're going to get the best of both worlds out of that. So continue to be innovative, continue to listen, and foster an environment where you take people's ideas and do something with them.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we have reached the question and answer portion of the presentation. So any questions out there?
So my question is for Mark.
The question is, how can we increase the rate of recruitment where it can sometimes go nine weeks between 9 to 12 months, okay, and losing applicants along the way. So the question is how to increase the speed of the recruitment process.
So I'm sure your process is similar to what our public safety and police go through as well. There are a number of stages that you can't bypass and need to be done. What our public safety people did was they came up with a process where they actually go to career fairs with a laptop and they will test on site and add people to an ongoing list. They've created what's called an open and continuous list that they can add a group to and then process that group, and at the next event they'll go to, they will add more people to that list, so it's a continuous list rather than one that opens and closes. They also have people on site who can start with all the documentation and the paperwork that needs to be collected in terms of background checks and psych evaluations and things of that nature. So what they do is they just set up sort of a pre-hire situation where they give them a conditional offer letter and they say, subject to all this verifying and all this panning out, we're going to offer you this salary. And that kind of hooks people in a little, so they think, well, I'm almost there. And they are until, something happens that they're not. Sure.
Got a gentleman in the back.
So I represent a rural area on the eastern shore of Maryland, and we have the opposite problem of probably what you're facing at the state level and in some of the various agencies, and that is to say that we have a lot of technical positions like wastewater treatment, senior directors of wastewater treatment, accounting officials, that sort of thing, but we can't attract candidates, and I'm curious, this is for Mr. Townsend, are your learnings in terms of video interviewing, data mining your databases, a million plus candidates, is that available to counties and municipalities, or are you open to building a relationship where we can learn from some of the things that you're doing to help entice people who may have applied for a senior position at, say, a wastewater treatment plant for the state, or some similar?
No. Yeah, I'm just kidding. The trouble is, if we have somebody who applies for a state job, we can't share that with non-state agencies. It's proprietary, it's kind of personnel information where we've worked with other state agencies who do licensing and registration, and we were able to pull lists of, during the pandemic, we were able to pull lists of licensed nurses and send them out notifications of our jobs. But it was because we're a state agency and the boards and commissions are overseen by the state. I don't know how we would do that, but I can tell you it's a good idea, sharing resources. So if you would like to email me a specific group you're looking for, maybe we can send out an email to people in our system and say, here is a job and a link to an announcement for a job in a geographical location. So if you're, specifically like St. Mary's County, maybe we could send people who had designated that they're interested in St. Mary's and in that particular vocation who had applied within the last 12 months, we might be able to send an email to them saying, here's an available job similar to what you were looking for. So we'd be willing to explore that with you and see what we can do.
May I just follow up?
Sure.
So in terms of, I really like the idea of video interviews, the idea of bringing that to municipal county governments, and really sort of a godsend for us, given our rural nature, right? Like the ability to just answer questions instead of driving out to get to an interview, right? Have you all worked up white papers or case studies that you could share with municipalities and county governments to help sort of alter that idea, right? You guys are a leader in this. How can that then germinate in other municipalities and counties?
Well, so it's kind of a pilot with us right now. We had a very small source procurement contract with Spark Hire to try their functionality. And the first couple times out of the gate, we hit some really hard stops. One of them was Department of Disabilities got wind and found that the software wasn't entirely compliant as needed by the state's disability statements. To sort of assist in that, we came up with a reasonable accommodation that if you had trouble or an inability to use the software, that we were going to allow Google, like a Google Meet or a Teams Meet, where we could interview you that way. So far, no one's taken us up on it, but again, we're kind of pushing it out slowly and looking for all the problems in it. I think once we get it ironed out, it'll probably be good for everybody because, again, as the state has a lot of resources and a lot of people watching, and if they see a problem with it, we're going to hear about it immediately. I think toward the end of this year, hopefully we'll have all the bugs ironed out. There's something with the VPAT or something where they had to get accessibility for people with disabilities. Other than that, I think it's working really well. We ran it by EEO, we ran it by a couple different agencies, and we're trying it with different, sort of situational opportunities. But I don't know that we're specifically publishing on it or making other people aware. I think it's, once we get it ironed out for us, I think it'll probably be a good precursor for anyone else to try it. Sure.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's a two-part question. Do you have any numbers here of how many more applicants have been processed as a result of eliminating some of the UK requirements? Kind of about a year at this point. And then the second part, I understand that you
Sure. So your question.
Do I need to repeat the question, or did I do? Okay. So the gentleman's question was a two-parter. The first part was asking if there are any numbers yet on what the increase has been in applications or hires since since the removal of the requirement for college degrees. And the second part was his understanding that there is now some exemptions or some exceptions that can be made for agencies that have a vacancy rate of higher than 14% to have the flexibility to bring in new hires higher than the mid-range. And if it is found to be non-competitive, then to require a parity study. Did I understand that correctly?
Those agencies might short-circuit the hiring process in some respects, so a lot quicker than getting folks on board.
And that those agencies with a vacancy rate of higher than 14% would be given the ability to short-circuit the hiring process to facilitate bringing people on board faster.
All right, so question one. The increases, so we didn't look at the number of applicants, but we looked at the number of hires in a 3-month period after we initially went sort of national, saying that we were going to evaluate the degree requirement. And in the 3 months immediately following the announcement, we saw a 40% increase in the number of hires for people without degrees. So there was a pretty substantial increase. I can't give you, that was year to year against the prior year, 3 months. I can't tell you if any other environmental factors contributed to that. I can't tell you as a percentage of the total vacancy rate what that did. I can only tell you what we could pull anecdotally, and that was that we saw a 40% increase in the number of non-degreed hires for a 3-month period year to year. Regarding some of the other initiatives that we've taken on, there is a provision in state statute called streamline hiring. And what you have is a normal prescribed merit process in state for skilled and professional jobs in the state of Maryland. What that acknowledges is streamline hiring says the Secretary of Budget Management can approve if there is an immediate need or if there is a difficulty to recruit documented. They can approve a streamlined process, which is more akin to how we hire our at-will positions. So we can bypass some of the statutory requirements. The way we keep a handle on that is that we have, while we have granted that for everybody with a vacancy rate above 14%, which is what we consider to be critical right now. If your vacancy is above 14, people aren't getting services that they need. We're not hiring people that we need to fill vacancies. We have, quite honestly, for every person we hire this month, I think a person has retired or left. So our terminations are matching, and termination not meaning fire, termination just meaning someone leaving service. They're matching up, so we need to increase the flow. So we have an approval right now for anybody above 14% to use a streamlined hiring process. What that entails is they have to send us their selection plan. They don't just get to go and do what they want to do. They have to make a sort of a plan, send it to us, and get our approval to use it. So if somebody says, Department of Public Safety, that they want to go and rather than have a 2-week open posting, that they want to go to a table like this at a graduation ceremony and just start taking applications, we'll approve them to do that on the basis that they're then going to go through and do all the follow-up steps appropriately. It has to make sense. It has to be in recognition of a difficulty, and public safety, I think, screams difficulty right now. They're having a hard time. Everybody they get as an applicant, they burn 100% of their applicant list every month trying to fill their positions. So there is nobody who's not getting consideration by their process. So we have to ensure that everybody gets inclusion, everybody gets sort of an equitable process, and that they have a fair shake of it. Regarding the salary piece, it used to be that if you were above midpoint on the salary scale, you had to ask for the Secretary's approval. The Secretary bumped that up to 3rd quartile, so agencies can now offer up to 3rd quartile. It doesn't mean, again, that they don't have to justify. You still have to justify, you still have to document, you still have to put that in the system as to why you did that. We're just not going to make it a terminal stop on your hiring process, waiting for us to get back to you to say whether or not it's approved. We then sort of moved it into an audit and oversight function where we go back and look at the documentation. If we see a recurring problem with somebody just granting high steps for no reason, we'll address that issue. But overwhelmingly right now, the problem has been that they need that ability to get comparable salaries, to get competitive salaries, and to make a quick offer. So this is helping us. 2 years ago we had about a 16% vacancy rate. We're now floating between 12 and 14 with a goal of getting it down below double digits by the end of the year. So we're moving. Did that answer everything? Yes. Great.
I will get you. I would like to jump into the question for John, so we can hear from our other speaker. So I'm taken back to times, probably about 2 years ago, when I was with the City of Baltimore, and the challenges we were facing, similar to your office, with making accessible hearings for the public, in particular council hearings, the Office of the Labor Commissioner, entities that in the past had opened up doors for individuals to be able to come in either for hearings or for appeal processes. And in assessing our options, including WebEx, which you ended up with, some of our challenges were related to mandated requirements like Open Meeting Act, or the privacy that surrounds a hearing, like a labor commissioner hearing. So that's, I will follow up on that question. And then an additional challenge that we found we faced was the digital divide and the inability or the inaccessibility of that technology to a good portion of the general public that needed to be able to utilize it to be able to participate in these. So question for you is, did you face similar challenges or requirements, and how did you get past those and be able to fully implement the use of WebEx?
Yes, in terms of being open to the public, many of our hearings are open to the public, and if a person wants to observe a hearing, they can call us, and we do make arrangements for that. We give them the WebEx information, provided that it's a hearing type that's open to the public. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Don't be shy.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, in terms of the accessibility of hearings, yes, that is a huge problem. WebEx, luckily, provides access by telephone. So if a person does not have a computer or doesn't have a computer with a camera, they can still participate by telephone. And then we also have changed our website several times to provide plain English instructions on how to request an in-person hearing if there's some impediment to you participating by computer or by telephone. So yes, those are, we're not subject to the Open Meetings Act, but we have tried to address both of those challenges.
Great, thank you. And we had a hand up at the back table there. Yes, ma'am.
Question for Mark. Would the state or DDM consider having quarterly meetings with other state agencies, counties, municipalities to discuss these recruitment paths that are being done and possibly exchange ideas? At MES, we had a little above 10% for our vacancy rate, and we're down 4 in 6 months. And just figured being able to exchange these ideas with other agencies would be a start to the right path.
And by other states, you mean other state agencies within the state of Maryland? Yeah, within Maryland. Okay. We do, and now I feel bad, maybe you're just not on the list. But what we, tomorrow we have a meeting with about 150 state personnel directors statewide to discuss what's going on and sort of progress and where we are. One of the big initiatives is to look at people on contract over 2 years who, by your own admission, if they're on contract for 2 years, they're an acceptable employee. And if you have a vacant PIN and somebody sitting on contract, it seems logical that you might be able to make good on that and get them into a PIN. I'll get you on that list if you're not. It might be Mona was on there or something, so I'm not sure how we viewed your group, but we'll get you on the list. Yeah. And being where you are, you frighten us, so we probably just try to operate a little bit around. Yeah. Sure.
We've got time for one more question. Yes.
I want to say first, thanks for asking that question. I had the same question also representing Baltimore City. So thanks for those comments. My second thing is actually a confirmation of what Mark mentioned about being actually about the signing bonus and the public being able to go educate and innovation does work.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and I will also comment that our CDL transportation in Maryland is independent of the state personnel management system. I mean, they're in it, but they don't talk with us about everything they do. One of the things they're doing is they have an apprenticeship program for CDL drivers. So they've set it up so that they will take someone who doesn't have a CDL, get them in, train them, provide the educational component, sort of move them up in salary as they become more advanced, and then get them in. We found that's helpful, but I think the signing bonus is probably a big driver too when you hear you can get a bonus like that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Mark and John, for your time.
And a round of applause for Chi-Chi for actually paying attention and being able to repeat the questions. That was always my downfall. Would you like to repeat that question? No. We're not going to take a break as it calls for in our schedule because we're running a little behind, but there's been lots of good information discussed here today. So next up is our second panel. It's titled Recruiting Talent into Government, Next Gen Leaders for Public Service. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this morning, Dr. Roger Hartley, Dean of the University of Baltimore's College of Public Affairs. Roger, take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. How are you? This has been just an absolutely amazing morning, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here and have the opportunity to be with you and to lead this panel on what I think is one of the most exciting developments nationally, but also at the University of Baltimore and our Schaefer Center for Public Policy. I'm Roger Hartley. I have the pleasure of serving as Dean of the College of Public Affairs at the University of Baltimore, which I'll get a chance to tell you a little bit more about a little bit later. But I also wanted to remind everyone that this is a special week. This is Public Service Week, and what could be a better... I know that Ann and team planned this specifically for this this week, but what better event could we possibly have at a more special week to celebrate our public servants and public service and the contributions in government, in nonprofits, and also in the private sector where public service is also done in a different way. I want to welcome our panelists today and note the title of our panel, which is Next Gen Leaders for Public Service, Recruiting Talent into Government. How many students do we have in the audience? If you don't mind, would you please stand? Students at the University of Baltimore or others? I know you're here. Don't be shy. Thank you. So the panel previous to ours sent one very important message. There are a whole lot of jobs out there. So get ready, go for them, and you're going to get a good one. And I'm looking forward through this next panel to tell you a little bit about the efforts that we have nationally, but also at the University of Baltimore to help get more students and young leaders into a pipeline to public service, as we call it in the Schaefer Center. I want to introduce our guests first. We have with us Emily Bolton. Emily, thank you for being with us. Emily serves as the Executive Vice President of the Volcker Alliance, which we have a very special relationship with that formed this past year, and she is going to be here to tell you a little bit about the national work in Next Gen Leaders for Public Service. We also are pleased to have with us Michelle Blair. Michelle, thank you. Michelle is the Environmental Programs Manager for the City of Laurel, who's going to tell us a little bit about her experience with Next Gen Leaders. And then also we have with us one of our students and our public service intern at the City of Laurel, Adiola Adeyemo. Thank you so much for being with us today to tell us a little bit about your experience as well. So I want to kick off and give our panelists about 5 to 7 minutes, I hope, with Emily Bolton. Emily?
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.
Hi. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you, Roger, for that introduction. Thank you, President Schmoke and Ann and Pat, where are you? And the rest of the team for having me here today. So I'm, as Roger mentioned, I'm the Executive Vice President at the Volcker Alliance. The Volcker Alliance has a mission to empower the public sector workforce to solve the challenges facing our nation. And, you know, I think it's a special partnership between our two organizations and the center hosting this event today, that both the Schaefer Center and the Volcker Alliance are organizations named for legendary public servants whose legacy is living on through future generations of public servants that they inspire. The vision of the Volcker Alliance is a public sector workforce with the experience, preparation, and commitment to ensure government is accountable and delivers with excellence. So it's very special for me to be here today. So a little bit about the, there's our mission and vision for you. And our founder, whom some of you may have heard of, Paul Volcker, spent almost 30 years in government service. So he was best known for his work as chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. Prior to that, he had served in several roles in the U.S. Treasury and also was president of the New York Fed. He's best known for his courageous monetary policy. I think, Michael, in your framework, he would probably be best known for his moral courage and perseverance in the face of stagflation in the 1970s. But he was really passionate about public service. He led 2 national commissions on the public service after he left the Fed. And he was really believed that schools of public service, like the one that Roger leads here, were singularly necessary to ensure that public sector leaders are equipped with the skills and acumen to carry out the challenging work of governance. So at the age of 86, he started the Volcker Alliance, and this year is our 10th anniversary. And this is an inspirational quote from him just about what he believed one could find in public service. He used to often say that there was unparalleled satisfaction to be found working in public service, which echoes a lot of the quotes from your remarks earlier, Michael. And I had the pleasure of working for him most of my career before he started the Alliance, and then as his chief of staff when he launched the organization in 2013. So we have a range of programs. They're focused on promoting innovation in public service education, so on educating future public servants, on connecting job seekers to city, state, and federal government jobs. And it's a real honor to have gotten to hear from you firsthand, Mark, about some of the innovations at the state level here, which I've done a lot of reading about, but it's very fun to get to hear about in person. We also work on empowering public servants with research on effective government and promoting diversity in government. And we try to inspire others with the story of Mr. Volcker's own courageous public leadership. And we believe that only through the inclusion and elevation of diverse perspectives can government identify and act on the best solutions to our nation's most complex challenges. So what I wanted to talk a little bit more about today was the program that the University of Baltimore has joined, which we call at the national level the Next Generation Service Corps, and the program here at the University of Baltimore is Next Gen Service Leaders. And the vision of this program is an American democracy strengthened by broad participation in public service, diverse leadership, and constructive collaboration. The idea, I think, which Mark spoke to so well in his remarks, is that there really is a place for people from all different backgrounds and with all different skill sets in government. Next Gen Service aims to increase the number of college students who are entering public service and prepare them to collaborate and tackle cross-sector challenges, and to increase the diversity of those entering public service and connect those people who might be interested in government jobs to those jobs. I want to tell you just a little bit about the origin of it. The idea actually came from legendary newsman Tom Brokaw. He was covering the war in Iraq, And he was noticing the need for civilian leaders as much as military leaders on the ground there. And he pondered that might we build a pipeline for young people that want to serve their country that would be like ROTC or the service academies, but really focused on the civilian population. So Arizona State University President Michael Crow heard Tom Brokaw speak about this challenge and decided to launch the first such program at Arizona State University in 2015. And as Dean Hartley knows, because he participates, the Volcker Alliance regularly convenes deans of schools of public service around the country through a forum that we call the Dean Summit. And it was through the Dean Summit that deans voiced their interest in expanding educational offerings to a broader group of undergraduate students. And they identified this program at Arizona State University as having promise for their own campuses. So the Volcker Alliance partnered with Arizona State University to launch the National Next Generation Service Corps and to help bring other schools into this program. So I'll just tell you a little bit more about the components of the program. The idea is that students can participate in the Next Generation Service Corps regardless of what they're majoring in. So it doesn't have to be your primary field of study to study public service or public administration for you to be able to find a career pathway in government. So students are recruited from any major, and there's a focus on recruiting students from underrepresented populations. And then in addition to their chosen major, students have additional coursework focused on public service values, cross-sector collaboration, and have experiential learning components, including internships, in which no program has been so successful as the University of Baltimore's. And there are retreats, workshops, and other applied work in their community to really help students explore public service work live. So the network of Next Generation Service Corps programs has grown to 15 schools around the country. And we just launched the national program in 2020. So Arizona State University had preceded the development of the national network by 5 years. And then we were going to have the first in-person convening to discuss the Next Generation Service Corps in March of 2020. It ended up being canceled, but the program grew during the pandemic regardless. As Roger knows well, these programs take a lot of planning, and so I actually think a number of universities were able to make progress on that planning effort during 2020 and then launched their programs afterwards. And the program really shows, I think, that its growth, its rapid growth, shows that there's a lot of young people around the country who have a passion to make a difference and are looking for a career that allows them to serve something larger than themselves. And with more schools joining the program, one thing that we're very excited about at the Volcker Alliance is that there becomes a greater opportunity to build a new network of rising leaders, and really, in our mind, a vibrant network of motivated young people who are sharing their ideas and connections about public service with one another would be the ultimate success of the Next Gen Service program. We have launched an online platform called which we call Next Gen Connect. It allows students and alumni to connect. You can post jobs there or internships. You can find mentors. So we're really hoping to grow that as an online community, and we're also hosting various cross-school events, both virtually and in person, trying to bring students from across the country who might not interact otherwise together to discuss policy issues and issues in their communities, and to develop leadership abilities from their work across campuses. So that's what I wanted to say about the national program. And the University of Baltimore, and I know Roger can speak to it more, but the University of Baltimore and the Schaefer Center just really stood out when they applied to join the National Next Generation Service Corps. As you know, the university is a predominantly black institution. It's also a public urban institution whose student body is majority first generation. It has a lot of part-time working adult professionals. And those characteristics really matter to us at the Alliance, given our focus on diversifying the public sector workforce. And really, the school here has such a broad sweep of offerings. You can study here as an undergraduate, a graduate student. You have formed special pathways for transfer students. You can tap into such a wide range of public service educational programs and experiential learning opportunities here at the University of Baltimore. And it is a really rich set of offerings that enables students to explore how public service can be a pathway to change lives and to experience that unparalleled satisfaction that Mr. Volker spoke to that could be derived from public service. So we're so pleased to welcome the University of Baltimore into the Next Generation Service Corps, and we have a lot to learn from your innovative programming and look forward to engaging your students with other public service-minded undergraduate Next Generation service students from around the country. And I think the internships, which I know you guys might speak more to, Ann and Roger, later, but the number of interns that you've placed just this academic year has been so incredible, and the state support that you've raised for those internships. So hats off to you, and we look forward to continuing to work together.
Thank you so much, Emily. I have to say that the Volker Alliance is very much a part of our story. It's very much a part of a dream, and we really thank you all so much for your support of our program. We've learned a ton from the Volker Alliance, and we're going to continue to work together. I was asked to give a few remarks on the story of our program and its development, and I'll just take a few moments. But really, the origins of the program kind of started as a dream of at least at one point in time in my career, a young faculty member who was kind of jealous, who learned over the years that you shouldn't be jealous, you should build something. And I will say that there has been a remarkable team of people that I want to recognize today that made this dream something very special. I started my career at the University of Arizona in a business school, and business schools are often very well funded in academia, and they had this remarkable entrepreneurship center that had all of these extra experiences for students. And I thought at the time, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we had a way to bring those kind of experiences to public service students too? What if we could create a public service academy or something like that, focusing on giving public service interested students co-curricular experiences, those experiences outside the classroom that make the inside the classroom learning real and that connect them to careers. That was what we started thinking about and started talking about as a field. And not just our own students in public service, in public administration, government, and others, but what about other fields all over a university, IT, and history, and finance, and law? Every major, as you know, goes into government, goes into public service, and many careers we can't, in schools of public service, train people for. We certainly can't for IT or some of the specialized fields that exist in government. So we need all of the fields inside of a university. What we started thinking about is what do our students need in those experiences? And then also we started to learn a lot about what do our employers need. And so we took a lot of time over the years, our team and I, to reach out to what has been hundreds of nonprofit leaders, government leaders at every level to ask, what are you looking for in this next generation? What do you need in your fields? So we learned that. And then we learned from our students too. What are their aspirations? What are their goals? What talents do they have? And what kind of experiences do they want in their education? We kind of merged it all together. And in our College of Public Affairs, we began and still have a real focus on public engagement. And teaching, research, and service, kind of pushing our students, our faculty, and our work outside of the boundaries of the university so that our work could have an impact on our communities and our state. And again, our students can learn from that work at the very same time. So we started, and I started scheming, as I sometimes say jokingly, with Ann Cotton and her team to start thinking about how we could build, at the time, this public service academy. And we decided to build it with existing programs. We already had things that we were doing. We had the Randolph Rosencrantz Local Government Fellows Program, and thanks, Peter Richkus, so much for your support of that fellowship program that pays student interns, leaders, to work in executive leadership positions inside of local governments. That fellowship existed. We created a community development fellows program that's only offered in Baltimore to city main streets and neighborhood revitalization organizations, where we pay students to have an impact on neighborhoods inside of the city of Baltimore. We had that. We had a career-focused speaker series that we created called Voices of Public Service that you may have heard about, but has brought in leaders from all over our state and city to not just speak, but to tell their story of their career and how they got to where they were to our students, noting the challenges and the opportunities that they faced. And we've had leaders like Speaker Adrian Jones, Mayor Brandon Scott, and countless others who have spoken to our students in the past 2 years. We had a student professional development fund where we started taking donations from our alums, bundling them together, $50 to $1,000, and we grant that out to our students so they can join professional associations in government and nonprofits. So we had a lot that we were doing, and so Ann and I decided, let's just bundle it all together and let's put it in the Schaefer Center, where it should be. We've decided to put it there to honor the legacy of William Donald Schaefer, but we also, I wanted to put it there because the Schaefer Center just flat out does great work. They get the job done, and as William Donald Schaefer used to say, they do it now. They absolutely do it now. So we put all that together, and then, as Emily mentioned, I started attending these conferences of deans, this Dean's Summit, and I learned about the Volcker Alliance, and I learned that they had this spectacular Next Gen Leaders program, Next Gen Service Corps as it's called, and then the light went off. And I ran back home, got on a plane, got a meeting with Ann Cotton, and we sat down when we started mapping out what this could be. It was no longer a public service academy. It was going to be Next Gen Leaders in Public Service is what it was going to be. And we were going to do a lot more. So we worked together with our Schaefer Center board and members who are here today. And I have to thank that board so very much. And we also worked with the university and our leadership, President Schmoke and others at the university, to create something really spectacular. Ann and I created a dream with a budget, as I sometimes say. A really great proposal that Ann and team wrote with a budget. And I need to especially thank Jim Smith, Bob Douglas, Ann Cotton, and leaders of our state like Speaker Jones and Senator McCrae and others for the support that we needed to get off the ground what is something that is now quite spectacular. And you're going to hear a lot more about, I believe it. This dream with the budget is now creating the following. Last year, over 50 paid internships in state and local governments in Maryland. Paid opportunities. And why paid? Members of our faculty who are here know this very well. They've worked with students who could not afford an elite experience that was only for elite students. Elite experiences for elite students attract elite students who have resources, and many students can't afford to take an unpaid internship. And Dr. Cotton and I wrote an article about that this past year. And with the help and this funding, we're going to have 25 paid nonprofit internships, and we hope to build on that support as well. And last, the team is now working on several other things. We were able to hire Pat Mikas, who's been a spectacular leader already in making all of this happen, frankly. Go Pat is right. But where we are now is, and you're going to hear more about this later, is we're kicking off now a curriculum that's going to be launched in the fall where any student at the University of Baltimore, no matter what their major is, history, finance, law, could learn public service values, learn about the values of public service, learn about the careers, learn about all of those jobs that we know that are vacant right now, and encourage them to go into it. And so that's going to begin in the fall, and we're going to recruit our first cohort in the spirit of what the Volcker Alliance has taught us. And so thank you again for that. So that's a little bit about our story, but I think the story is best told by those who participate in the programs. And I really thank Ann and Pat for thinking up the idea and for the special invitation that we extended to Michelle Blair of the City of Laurel and also our student, Adiola Adeyemo. Thank you both for attending today. And Michelle, would you like to give some remarks? And then Adiola after. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Blair, and I am happy to be part of this panel and to share my thoughts on the importance of internships such as the Next Gen leaders and the challenges facing local governments, especially small municipalities, in attracting young people to work in public service. As we have heard, recruiting for local governments is challenging at best. We often can't offer high salaries or benefits. And for the shorter people. Our benefits such as pension, health insurance, short-term disability, and long-term disability, while excellent, are not necessarily sexy and attractive to young people. The idea of working somewhere for 20 to 30 years is a foreign concept to many. We don't sell widgets, and no one gets a bonus based on sales, so I think it's difficult to sell the benefits of a career in government. This is why internships like Next Gen Leaders is so important. This is a way to highlight the importance of having experience in working in public service. We are not a business of selling a product, but rather in the business of creating community investment, creating and sending out the message that each resident has a say and is an important part of the initiatives their local government is spending energy and money on. Working for a local government is grassroots at its best. It is a way to personally be able to improve the quality of life for our communities. Personally, I think each student should spend at least a year working for local governments. I think the experience of wearing so many different hats is an experience that nurtures strengths and offers an important lesson in areas that are not a good fit. Local governments offer students the opportunity to try new things, bring in new ideas, and because we are not limited to a profit margin, there's a lot more freedom to create different programs. I was thrilled to be able to bring Adiola on board. I hope she learned something about working in public service, and I really hope she is the first of many next-gen interns. I want to do a shout out to Pat, who made the process of having Adiola on board a simple, streamlined, and enjoyable process. And I think, and I'm going to leave that up because there you see Adiola at our kickoff for our NOMO April, and there she is in action, and I will let her speak to her experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope this is good. Hi everyone. My name is Adiola Adeyemo, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Baltimore, MFA program in Creative Writing and Publishing Arts. I have no background in public administration or public policy, but I'm very passionate about creating content. I have a master's also in journalism, so I help organizations translate like complex messaging to simple, easy to digest bits. And this is something I've always been passionate about. So anything that has to do with social media, content creation, communications, and writing which is what I'm currently doing now, is something that I love to do. So when I heard about the Next Gen program, I was very interested in a position that helped me, work in the communications team of an organization. But, looking at the list of available options, I saw something with the City of Laurel. And, I just thought, I have never worked in any organization that, specifically focuses on environment. I've worked on health-related projects and drug use and drug prevention projects, but environment was very new to me. And it was an opportunity to learn something new. So I applied for the position, and, I was attached to work with Michelle, and it's been a very, very rewarding experience. I'll say one of the major challenges I've faced in this is just being in a new space, having to learn new things about the environment. This is a project that we worked on called No More April, and it's a program where in the month of April we encourage residents of the City of Laurel not to mow their lawns. And this is not something that I was very familiar with. I mean, like, why not mow your lawn? I had to learn all about bees and pollinators and, grasses and native plants. And this was completely new forte for me. And it's just been very interesting and rewarding learning about the importance of all this initiative and projects on the environment. Currently, we're working on the farmers market. The farmers market in the City of Laurel was kind of stopped right before COVID, and we're trying to resuscitate that now. So it's been a bit of a challenging project trying to get vendors to sign up and be part of it. So it's something that has put me directly in touch with the residents of the City of Laurel, and not just the City of Laurel, just generally in Maryland, trying to tell them, hey, we're back in session, come and register. This is supposed to start in 2 days, that's this week, and we have a few vendors signed up, not enough, and we're still trying to get more. So these are the kind of initiatives that I've been working on. Another thing that I remember working on was a public plastic ban policy. So one thing that Michelle had me working on, right at the start of my internship was, editing some ordinances, and I'm talking about 20 to 30 page legal documents, which I knew nothing about. And, she really helped me through the process in trying to understand the language and trying to edit things. And it's just been very rewarding, learning and just expanding my knowledge in all these aspects. I work 20 hours a week in this position, and work on site just once in a week. Michelle is very flexible in terms of just allowing me to do things that don't affect my studies. So, aside from the Mondays, which I go into the office, other days of the week, I work remotely, and then we have check-in meetings, we have online meetings, and she's always very particular about, Adiola, send me an update at the end of the day, send me an update. Sometimes, I feel like I forget and all of that, but I found that, it's very important to keep her updated, keep her, in tune with everything that I'm working on, and we have this, tracking sheet of, making sure that everything is, crossed and ticked off. I also have been exposed to a lot of administrative duties. Like I said earlier, my background is in communications, but this position helps me learn more than just communications in terms of just collating data, managing spreadsheets, managing information with regards to residents, and things like putting it in a very easy to read and presentable way. This is something that I've not been exposed to before. So general administrative duties is something that has helped me and broadened my scope in public policy. In all, I'd just like to say that it's been very rewarding again in this position. Unfortunately, my time with in this position is coming to an end in a few weeks, but I still intend to stay with the Next Gen public policy, program if there's another opportunity that I see that is, something that I'm interested in working with. And I'm very grateful to Pat. You really helped me in terms of helping me choose a position that was in tune with my skills and my passion and what I was, interested in working with. I'm just grateful to the to the management of the University of Baltimore and helping me, with this position. I'm an immigrant, an international student as well, and it's just interesting for me to have this kind of opportunity that helps me learn and also work and also get paid while I work. It's really, really cool. So I'm grateful for this opportunity and this time to speak on this panel. Thank you so much.